Celeste Moreau woke up to a soft hum in the air. Her body felt weightless, as if she were floating in a dream. But the cold metal beneath her hands told her this was no dream. She sat up quickly, her dark curls falling into her face. She pushed them back and blinked, trying to adjust to the dim, silver-blue lighting. The room was unlike anything she had ever seen. Smooth, curved walls that pulsed with faint, glowing lines. Strange symbols shimmered across the surface, shifting like living ink. Panic shot through her veins. Where was she? She tried to stand, but the floor felt unsteady, as if the entire space around her was moving. The last thing she remembered was walking home from work, the night air crisp against her skin. Then, a flash of light, a deep, vibrating sound. And now, this. The door in front of her slid open with a soft hiss. Celeste gasped as two figures entered. The first was a woman, tall and dressed in a sleek uniform of deep violet, her skin smooth like polished obsidian. Her golden eyes studied Celeste with detached curiosity. But it was the second figure that made Celeste's breath catch. A man, if he could be called that, stood behind the woman. He was tall, impossibly tall, with a strong, broad-shouldered frame wrapped in dark, battle-worn armor. His silver skin shimmered under the light, and his black hair was swept back in a way that revealed the sharp, regal angles of his face. His eyes, a piercing shade of steel blue, locked onto her with an unreadable expression. Not human, not even close. Celeste pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding. "Where am I?" she demanded. "Who are you?" The woman spoke first. "You are aboard the Sci-Fi Dominion flagship. I am High Minister Xyra. This is Commander Vale Thurzin." Vale. The name was as sharp as he looked. Celeste shook her head. "I don't understand. Why am I here?" Xyra's expression remained unreadable. "You have been chosen. By order of the High Council, you are to be bound in sacred union with Commander Vale Thurzin. This is a great honor." The words hit Celeste like a blow. "Married. To an alien." A sharp laugh bubbled from her lips. "You're joking," she said, but neither of them smiled. "You can't just take me and force me into some marriage. I don't even know who you are." Vale remained silent, watching her. There was something in his gaze, calm, calculating. Not cruel, but not comforting either. Xyra clasped her hands behind her back. "Refusal is not an option. Your planet is at a turning point. This union will secure Earth's survival against the coming war. It is your duty." Celeste clenched her fists. "You expect me to believe that? That marrying him is supposed to save my world?" For the first time, Vale spoke. His voice was deep, controlled. "Believe what you wish, but know this: if you refuse, Earth will stand alone, and it will fall." A cold fear gripped Celeste's chest. She could see it in their faces. They weren't lying. But how could she trust them? Her mind raced for a way out. Escape. She had no idea where she was, and Vale looked strong enough to stop her with a flick of his wrist. Fight. Against an armored alien warlord. Not a chance. Her pulse hammered as she met Val's gaze. "And if I say yes, what happens then?" Xyra's lips curled into a small, satisfied smile. "Then you become one of us." Celeste swallowed hard. She had no choice. And she hated it. Celeste sat stiffly in a grand chamber, her hands gripping the smooth metal armrests of the chair beneath her. The walls were dark silver, lined with glowing patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. A massive window stretched across one side, revealing the endless black void of space. Distant stars twinkled, reminding her just how far from home she was. She wasn't on Earth anymore, and she might never return. Vale Thurzin stood across from her, his towering form bathed in the soft glow of the room's strange lights. His silver skin reflected hints of blue and violet, and his piercing steel blue eyes studied her with unsettling calm. He didn't seem pleased about this forced marriage either, but he showed no sign of anger or doubt. "Do you understand what is at stake?" he asked, his voice deep and measured. Celeste crossed her arms, her fingers digging into her sleeves. "You tell me. All I know is that I was kidnapped, and now I'm being told I have to marry you to save my planet." Sounds ridiculous. Vale didn't flinch at her defiance. "The Sci-Fi Dominion does not make meaningless alliances. Your world is on the edge of war. The Vrakan swarm is coming, and they do not negotiate. They take. They destroy." Celeste's heart pounded. She had never heard of the Vrakan, but the way he said their name sent a chill down her spine. "And what does that have to do with me?" she demanded. "Why force me into this marriage?" Zyra, the High Minister, stepped forward. "Because Earth is valuable, and an official union between you and Commander Vale ensures that your people are protected under Zephyr law. Without this bond, Earth is nothing more than a contested battleground." Celeste clenched her jaw. It felt like a trap. They were giving her no real choice. She turned to Vale. "And you're just going along with this?" His expression remained unreadable. "I do what is necessary." Celeste exhaled sharply. "Necessary for who?" "For you. For your empire." Val's gaze darkened, but before he could respond, Thyra spoke again. "You will not find a better offer, Celeste Moreau. The Zephyr do not force peace where it is not earned. This is our price. Refuse and Earth will stand alone." Celeste's mind raced. Was this all a manipulation? Was there another way out? She studied Vale again. His stance was strong, but there was no hostility in it. If anything, there was something restrained about him, something reluctant. He wasn't happy about this either. That meant she might have some leverage. She straightened her shoulders. "Fine," she said at last, her voice steady. "I'll agree, but on one condition." Thyra lifted an eyebrow. "You are not in a position to bargain." Celeste ignored her, keeping her eyes on Vale. "If I do this, I want answers. I want to know why my world is really so important. I want access to your records, your history, everything." Val's expression didn't change, but for the first time, she saw something flicker in his gaze. Curiosity. Approval. Thyra, however, frowned. "That is not." "It will be allowed," Vale interrupted. Kazara's eyes snapped to him in surprise, but she didn't argue. Celeste swallowed. She had just agreed to something she didn't fully understand. But one thing was clear. She wasn't going to be a silent pawn in this game. She was going to learn the truth. And if they were hiding something, she would find a way to fight back. Celeste walked through the dimly lit corridors of the Sci-Fi flagship, her thoughts racing. The metallic walls hummed softly, and the strange symbols running along their surfaces pulsed with energy. Everything about this place felt cold and unfamiliar. She wasn't a prisoner. Not exactly. But she wasn't free either. A few Zephyr soldiers passed by, their armor sleek and dark, their glowing eyes barely acknowledging her. She felt like an outsider, a human trapped in a world she didn't belong to. Her guide, a smaller Zephyr attendant named Lyra, moved with quiet efficiency. Lyra was one of the few crew members who didn't seem completely indifferent to her presence. Her pale violet skin and dark silver eyes gave her an ethereal look, and her voice, though soft, carried authority. "Your quarters are ahead," Lyra said, gesturing to a curved doorway. Celeste sighed. "Great, can't wait to see my luxurious new cage." Lyra's lips twitched, almost like she wanted to smile but wasn't sure if she was allowed to. "It is far more comfortable than a cage, I assure you." The door slid open, revealing a surprisingly elegant chamber. The walls were made of the same smooth metal, but the lighting was softer here, almost warm. A large bed sat in the center, covered in dark blue fabric that shimmered like silk. A seating area was arranged near a wide window, showing the endless stars beyond. Celeste stepped inside hesitantly. "Not bad," she admitted. "Still feels like I'm living in a spaceship, though." Lyra tilted her head. That is because you are. Celeste sighed. Right. Thanks for the reminder. Before Lyra could respond, a deep voice spoke from the doorway. You should rest. Celeste turned sharply to find Vale Tharzin standing at the entrance, his tall frame casting a long shadow into the room. His silver skin gleamed under the lights, and his piercing steel-blue eyes held the same unreadable expression he always wore. Lyra bowed her head slightly. Commander. Then, without another word, she slipped out of the room, leaving Celeste alone with Vale. Celeste crossed her arms. Are you here to make sure I don't try to escape? Because I hate to break it to you, but I have no idea how to fly a spaceship. Vale remained still. You would not get far if you did. Wow, you really know how to make a girl feel at home. He ignored the sarcasm. You asked for access to our records. I have authorized limited clearance. Celeste's eyebrows lifted. That fast? I thought I'd have to fight for it. Val's gaze remained steady. I keep my word. For a moment, she studied him. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His chiseled features, his powerful build, the way he carried himself with absolute confidence. But there was something else too. A restraint, like he was holding something back. Celeste exhaled, sitting on the edge of the bed. Okay, then tell me, why me? Out of billions of humans, why was I chosen? Vale was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped forward. Your bloodline carries something unique, a genetic marker tied to an ancient agreement between our people. The High Council believes it is the key to activating a forgotten technology. Celeste frowned. What kind of technology? His jaw tightened slightly. That is what you will help us discover. Her stomach twisted. This wasn't just about politics. There was something deeper, something they weren't telling her. She met his gaze. And what do you believe? For the first time, a flicker of something unreadable crossed his expression. I believe you are more important than even the High Council realizes. His words sent a shiver down her spine, because she wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a very, very bad one. Celeste couldn't sleep. She lay in the large, unfamiliar bed, staring up at the smooth metal ceiling. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of energy running through the ship's walls. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind raced. A genetic marker, an ancient agreement, forgotten technology. None of it made sense. She wasn't special. She was just a woman who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or at least, that's what she had thought. Frustrated, she sat up and swung her legs over the side of the bed. The floor was cool beneath her bare feet. If I'm going to be stuck here, I might as well start getting some answers. She stood, grabbed the long dark robe that had been left for her, and wrapped it around herself before stepping toward the door. It slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the dimly lit corridor. The ship was eerily quiet at this hour. The curved walls pulsed with faint blue light, guiding her forward. She wasn't sure where she was going, just that she needed to do something, anything, other than sit in silence. She turned a corner and nearly crashed into someone. A firm hand caught her wrist before she could stumble back. She looked up, straight into the piercing steel-blue eyes of Vale Tharzin. His grip was firm but not painful, his silver skin glowing faintly in the low light. His black hair was slightly tousled, as if he, too, hadn't been sleeping. What are you doing wandering the halls at this hour? His deep voice was calm, but there was a hint of curiosity in it. Celeste pulled her wrist free. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd take a walk. His gaze flickered over her, as if analyzing her intent. A walk, or a search for answers. She lifted her chin. Maybe both. Vale studied her for a moment, then surprised her by turning. Follow me. Celeste hesitated but quickly fell into step beside him. They walked in silence, passing through the winding corridors until they reached a massive door. Vale placed his hand on a panel, and the door slid open, revealing a vast chamber filled with floating holograms, moving diagrams, and walls lined with shimmering alien text. Celeste's breath caught. What is this place? The Hall of Records, Vale said. Every piece of information our empire has gathered on Earth, its history, and its connection to the Zephyr Dominion. She stepped inside slowly, her eyes darting between the glowing projections. There were star maps showing Earth's position, old sketches of ancient civilizations, and images of strange symbols carved into ruins she didn't recognize. Celeste reached out, and as if responding to her presence, one of the holograms shifted, revealing an ancient-looking stone tablet covered in symbols. It looked old, almost human, but not quite. She turned to Vale. This was found on Earth. He nodded. Your ancestors were not as alone as your history claims. Celeste exhaled sharply. So, what? You're saying humans had contact with aliens thousands of years ago. Val's expression remained unreadable. More than contact. A pact was made, a promise sealed by blood. She swallowed. And my bloodline carries the key to unlocking what was left behind. A cold chill ran down her spine. She had always thought of herself as ordinary. But if what Vale was saying was true, then her entire existence, her entire planet's existence, was built on a secret no human even remembered. She looked up at him, her heart pounding. And what happens if I refuse to help? Vale didn't answer immediately. Then, in a voice quiet but firm, he said, then Earth will never be ready for what's coming. The weight of those words settled in her chest. She had a choice to make, one that could change everything. And she wasn't sure if she was ready. Celeste stared at the glowing hologram of the ancient stone tablet. Strange symbols covered its rough surface, their meaning lost to time. And yet, something about them felt familiar. She reached out, letting her fingers hover over the projection. The moment she did, the symbols shifted, rearranging themselves into a new pattern. A deep hum filled the air, and suddenly, words appeared in a language she could read. Her breath caught. It had responded to her. Vale took a step closer, his steel-blue eyes locked on the hologram. His usually controlled expression showed the faintest flicker of surprise. What did you do? He asked. Celeste swallowed hard. I don't know. She turned back to the glowing words, her heart racing as she read them aloud. When the stars darken and the void awakens, the guardians must return. The bloodline holds the key. The moment she finished speaking, the entire chamber trembled. The floating projections flickered, and a new image appeared before them, a vision of Earth, engulfed in fire. Celeste gasped. What? What is this? Val's jaw tightened. A warning. The hologram shifted again, showing strange, insect-like creatures descending upon cities, tearing through buildings, consuming everything in their path. Their black, armored bodies gleamed under burning skies, their many eyes glowing like molten gold. Celeste felt sick. The Vracan. Vale nodded grimly. This was recorded centuries ago. The Vracan do not simply invade. They erase. Planets that do not defend themselves are consumed and forgotten. Celeste tore her eyes away from the nightmare playing out before her. And my bloodline is supposed to stop this. Vale turned to face her fully. Your ancestors were part of the original pact. They were given knowledge, technology, that could have prepared Earth for what's coming. But for some reason, that knowledge was lost. Celeste clenched her fists. Then why don't you just tell us? Give Earth the weapons it needs. Val's gaze darkened. It is not that simple. The Sci-Fi cannot interfere with undeveloped worlds unless there is a binding alliance. Realization struck her like a lightning bolt. That's why you need this marriage. Vale inclined his head. With our union, Earth becomes part of the Sci-Fi Dominion. Only then can we legally intervene. Celeste's mind spun. The weight of everything was suffocating. She had spent her whole life believing she was just one person among billions, but now she was the key to Earth's survival. She let out a bitter laugh. So, I either marry you and let your people protect Earth, or I refuse, and we all get wiped out. Val's expression remained unreadable. I do not force choices upon others, but I do not lie, either. Celeste took a deep, shaky breath. She hated this. She hated being backed into a corner. But looking at the vision of Earth's destruction, she knew there was no real choice at all. She turned back to him, her green eyes fierce. Then show me everything. If I'm going to do this, I want to know exactly what I'm fighting for. Val's gaze softened, just barely. Very well. With a wave of his hand, the hologram shifted, revealing the hidden history of Earth that no human had ever seen. And as Celeste took her first step toward the unknown, she knew that her life, and the fate of her world, would never be the same. Celeste stood in the center of the Hall of Records, surrounded by holograms of long-lost history. The images floated around her, ancient ruins, forgotten battles, symbols carved into stone that glowed with an otherworldly light. She had asked for the truth, and now it was unfolding before her. Vale Tharzin stood beside her, silent but watchful. His steel-blue eyes reflected the shifting lights of the holograms. He was giving her space, a small kindness in the middle of a storm. Celeste exhaled slowly. Tell me everything. Vale nodded. With a wave of his hand, one of the holograms expanded, showing a massive golden temple-like structure standing beneath twin suns. The architecture was unlike anything she had ever seen, smooth, flowing, as if it had been shaped by the wind itself. This is the Temple of the First Pact, Vale said. 10,000 years ago, a Sci-Fi emissary arrived on Earth. Your ancestors stood where you stand now, faced with the same decision. Celeste's brows furrowed. Why did they make the pact? The image changed, showing a vision of humans and Zephyr standing together, united against a monstrous enemy. A great war raged, not on Earth, but among the stars. The Vrakan have threatened countless worlds. Your ancestors knew Earth would not remain hidden forever, so they chose to forge an alliance. They were given knowledge, weapons, the chance to advance far beyond their time. Celeste frowned. But if that's true, why don't we remember any of this? Why is Earth still primitive compared to you? Val's gaze darkened. Because the knowledge was lost, or erased. The hologram flickered, shifting to an image of a great library consumed by fire. Scrolls and artifacts turned to ash. Celeste clenched her fists. Someone wanted to keep humanity weak. Vale nodded, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of greed. But the result was the same. Earth was left unprepared. And now, history is repeating itself. Celeste turned away, her mind spinning. This changes everything. She had always thought of Earth as small, insignificant in the vastness of space. But now she knew the truth. Earth was meant to be part of something greater. She looked at Vale. And now you want to restore that alliance through marriage. Vale met her gaze. It is the fastest, most binding way to unify our worlds. Your bloodline holds the key. A political union would allow us to intervene, to arm Earth with the defenses it needs before the Vrakan arrive. Celeste let out a short, bitter laugh. No pressure, huh? Val's expression didn't change, but there was something in his eyes, something almost regretful. I will not force you, he said quietly. This must be your choice. Celeste turned away, staring at the vision of Earth burning. She knew what was at stake. The Vrakan were coming. Her world was defenseless. If she walked away now, billions would die. She took a deep breath, then another. She didn't want this. She hadn't asked for it. But maybe she was meant for this. Finally, she turned back to Vale, meeting his gaze head-on. I'll do it. For the first time, Vale's expression shifted, just slightly. A flicker of something that almost looked like relief. But Celeste wasn't finished. I'll marry you. But on one condition. She straightened, her green eyes fierce. Earth doesn't just become a protectorate. We become an equal. No secrets. No hidden truths. If we're going to fight together, we fight as one. Vale studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he inclined his head. "As you wish." Celeste exhaled, the weight of her decision settling on her shoulders. This was it, the moment everything changed. Earth had been silent for too long. Now, it was time to rise. Celeste stood at the heart of the Sci-Fi capital, a massive city floating among the stars. Towers of shimmering metal stretched toward the sky, their surfaces reflecting the glow of distant planets. The air was filled with a soft hum of energy, and beneath her feet, the sleek pathways pulsed with veins of light. She had never seen anything like this. This wasn't just a new world, it was a different reality. Despite the breathtaking view, her mind was heavy with the weight of what was about to happen. The ceremony was set to begin. Vale stood beside her, dressed in regal dark blue and silver robes, the fabric shimmering under the alien sky. His tall, commanding presence was as unshakable as ever, but there was something different about him today, something softer. Celeste herself wore a flowing gown woven from a material she couldn't name. The fabric shifted like liquid silver, catching the light in strange and beautiful ways. She barely recognized herself in it. She took a slow breath, steadying her nerves. This was more than just a marriage. It was a pact, a battle cry, a promise that Earth would not stand alone. Across from her stood the Sci-Fi High Council, their silver-skinned faces unreadable as they observed her. A small crowd of dignitaries had gathered. Aliens from different worlds, each here to witness this moment. The High Chancellor, an elder Sci-Fi with piercing violet eyes, stepped forward. His deep voice carried through the air. Today, two worlds become one. In the tradition of the First Pact, this union binds not only two souls, but two civilizations. Celeste's heartbeat quickened. She had agreed to this, but standing here now, surrounded by beings who had lived centuries longer than her, she felt small. Vale turned to her, his steel blue eyes meeting hers. His gaze was unwavering, steady. A silent question, a silent reassurance. Celeste straightened her shoulders. She was here for a reason. The Chancellor continued. Vale Tharzan of the Zephyr Dominion, do you swear to uphold this bond, to stand beside Earth as its protector and equal? Vale bowed his head. I swear it. The Chancellor turned to her. Celeste Arwen of Earth, do you swear to uphold this bond, to stand beside the Sci-Fi as their ally and kin? Celeste took a breath. This was it. I swear it. A pulse of energy filled the air, and the holographic sigils around them flared to life. The ancient symbols of the First Pact, the same ones Celeste had seen in the Hall of Records, lit up, wrapping around her and Vale in rings of golden light. She felt something shift in her chest, as if an invisible thread had tied her to Vale, to this moment, to the weight of history itself. The Chancellor lifted his hands. The bond is sealed. The crowd erupted in applause, but Celeste barely heard it. The realization of what had just happened settled over her like a tidal wave. She turned to Vale. His expression remained unreadable, but in his eyes, she saw something else. Respect, recognition, understanding. He extended his hand. Celeste hesitated for only a second before taking it. For better or worse, their fates were now tied together. And beyond the shining city, beyond the stars, the Vrakan watched from the shadows, waiting. The celebration had barely ended when the first alarm sounded. Celeste stood on the balcony of the Sci-Fi Palace, gazing at the vast starscape when the skies darkened. Massive shadows blotted out the twin suns, their jagged, insect-like forms unmistakable. The Vrakan had arrived. Her breath caught as the glowing shields around the city flared to life. The soft hum of the metropolis turned into a wail of sirens. Ships soared into formation, their sleek forms maneuvering like birds of prey. Vale appeared at her side, his expression unreadable but his body tense. They're early, he said darkly. Celeste tore her eyes from the sky. They were watching us. They knew this alliance would happen, and they wanted to strike before we had time to prepare. Vale nodded, his steel blue eyes locked on the incoming fleet. They underestimated us. A Zyphar officer ran up to them, bowing quickly. Commander, our forces are mobilizing. The fleet is ready for your orders. Vale didn't hesitate. Deploy the first wave. Engage defensive formations. Keep them from breaching the outer perimeter. The officer nodded and rushed off. Celeste clenched her fists. What about Earth? They're still vulnerable. Vale turned to her. Not for long. He gestured toward a hovering console, where a hologram of Earth's orbit appeared. Dozens of Zyphar ships had already positioned themselves, forming a protective barrier around the planet. Celeste exhaled in relief. But the battle was far from over. A massive explosion erupted in the distance, shaking the palace itself. A Vrakan dreadnought had fired its plasma cannons, and the Zyphar shields struggled to hold. The air around them crackled as defense turrets sprang to life. Celeste's pulse raced. This was happening. This was real. She turned to Vale. I want to fight. His sharp gaze met hers. This is not your battle alone. She stepped closer. No, it's not. It's our battle. That's what this alliance is about, right? Fighting together. Vale studied her for a long moment. Then, finally, he nodded. Then let's show them what Earth and Zyphar can do. The battle begins. Minutes later, Celeste found herself in the cockpit of a Zyphar fighter, the controls glowing under her fingers. The neural interface synced with her mind, adjusting to her reflexes instantly. She barely had time to be amazed before the ship launched. The battlefield was chaos. Bright streaks of energy, explosions flashing against the darkness, alien warships clashing in a violent dance. Celeste gritted her teeth and dove into the fray. She dodged incoming fire, her fighter twisting through the battlefield. A Vrakan interceptor locked onto her, its insectoid wings slicing through space as it fired plasma bolts in rapid succession. Celeste barely rolled away in time. Vale, I've got one on me, she called through the comms. Hold steady, his voice came through, calm and sure. A second later, a bolt of blue energy pierced the enemy ship, sending it spiraling into the void. Vale's fighter shot past her, sleek and deadly, before looping back into formation. Watch your flank, he said. Celeste smirked, her pulse racing. Noted. She refocused, targeting a larger enemy warship. If they didn't take out the dreadnoughts, the city's shields wouldn't hold. Val's voice came through again. Follow my lead. Together, they sped toward the enemy flagship. Celeste dodged incoming fire, her instincts sharper than ever. She lined up her weapons and let loose a volley of plasma torpedoes. The explosion was blinding. As the dreadnought erupted in flames, the battlefield shifted. The Zyphar forces began pushing back, their unity overwhelming the Vrakan's brute force. Celeste's heart pounded as the enemy fleet started to retreat. She exchanged a look with Vale through their cockpit views. For the first time in history, Earth had fought among the stars, and they had won. But this was only the beginning. The Vrakan would return, and next time, they would be ready. Humanity had taken its first step into the universe, and Celeste knew, without a doubt, they would never bow to anyone again.